she handed me a piece of paper, folded in thirds, crisp edges, like she'd practiced the fold. And she said, and I want you to hear this clearly, she said, "This is an eviction notice. You have 30 days to leave my house." My house. I looked at that paper. I looked at her, this woman standing in my kitchen in her silk blouse and her freshly blown out hair with that smile she always wore when she thought she'd won something. And I felt the strangest thing. Not anger, not hurt, not even shock. I felt calm. Because what she didn't know, what she had never bothered to find out, was that somewhere in a fireproof safe, tucked behind 30 years of tax returns and my late husband's military discharge papers, was a deed with my name on it. And honey, everything she thought she owned, it was mine. Every single square foot of it.
My name is Carol Ann Whitfield. I am 63 years old. I raised one son, my beautiful, complicated, well-meaning son. His name is Daniel. I buried a husband named Robert after 31 years of marriage. And I have spent the last 4 years watching a woman named Brittany slowly, methodically try to erase me from my own life. But this story isn't really about Brittany, not at its core. This story is about what happens when a woman who has been quiet for too long finally decides to stop being quiet. So pull up a chair, because I'm going to tell you everything. And I mean everything. Let me take you back. The year is 1987. Robert and I are 24 years old. We are newly married, broke as the day is long, and absolutely bursting with hope. We drove a truck that smelled like motor oil and ambition. We ate a lot of rice and beans. We laughed about it, the way you can only laugh about being broke when you're in love and you still believe the future is a door that's about to swing open. Robert worked construction during the day. I waitressed at a diner called Patty's off Route 12, the kind of place with laminated menus and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting since the Nixon administration. We saved. Oh, we saved. Every dollar we didn't spend on food or rent went into an envelope we kept in the freezer, tucked behind a box of fish sticks. Robert used to joke that we were the only people in America whose retirement plan was frozen. I miss that man every single day. But here's what I need you to understand about Robert. He was smart in a way that people who knew him didn't always see at first. He looked like a simple man, worked with his hands, didn't say much at parties, but Robert understood money. He understood property. He understood that in this country, the most powerful thing a working-class person can ever own is land with their name on it. So in 1991, after 4 years of fish sticks and double shifts and saying no to everything, we bought our first house. A little 3-bedroom ranch on Clover Hill Drive in Mill Haven, Ohio. Pale yellow siding, a porch that tilted slightly to the left, a backyard with a crabapple tree that bloomed every April like it was showing off. We signed those papers at a fold-up table in a title company office. My hand was shaking. Robert squeezed it. He said, "Carol Ann, this is ours. Nobody can take this from us." I didn't know then how prophetic those words were going to be. Daniel was born in 1993. Our boy, our miracle, The child we'd prayed for through 2 miscarriages and one very long, very quiet winter where Robert and I barely spoke about it because the grief was too heavy to carry out loud. But Daniel came. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, a full head of dark hair. Robert cried in that delivery room. I have never before or since seen that man cry like that. We raised Daniel on Clover Hill Drive. He learned to ride his bike in that driveway. He carved his initials in the crabapple tree. He had his first heartbreak in that kitchen, some girl named Melissa from his sophomore English class, and I made him hot chocolate and let him talk until midnight. We were not a perfect family. I want to be clear about that. Robert and I had our fights, our silences, our years when the marriage felt like a machine running on fumes. But we always came back to each other, always came back to that house. In 2004, Robert got a promotion that moved us to a bigger property, a 2-story colonial on Ashford Lane, about 12 miles from Clover Hill. 4 bedrooms, a real dining room, a garage. We were so proud. We kept the Clover Hill house as a rental. Robert managed it himself, found tenants, collected rent, fixed what needed fixing. He called it our backup plan. I called it his baby. By the time Daniel graduated high school, we had paid off the Clover Hill mortgage entirely. By the time he graduated college, Ohio State business degree, Robert had retired early and started doing real estate consulting on the side. We weren't rich, but we were solid, rooted. And those roots were about to matter more than I ever imagined. Daniel met Brittany Caldwell at a work conference in Columbus. He called me the same night, which he never did. Daniel was not a call your mother the same night kind of young man. And he said, "Mom, I met someone. I really think this is it." I was happy for him. I was genuinely, completely happy for him. Brittany was beautiful, I'll give her that. She was sharp, ambitious, well-dressed. She worked in marketing and had the kind of confidence that fills a room before she's even finished walking into it. The first time Daniel brought her to Sunday dinner, she complimented my cornbread. The second time, she brought her own wine, which, fine, but she also quietly rearranged the centerpiece on my dining table. I told myself I was being too sensitive. Mothers always are, right? That's what everyone says. They got engaged in 2019. Daniel proposed with Robert's mother's ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond that I had kept in my jewelry box since Robert passed in 2018. Robert died of a heart attack, by the way. Sudden, 70 years old, a Tuesday morning in February. No warning, just gone. I'm going to keep moving because if I stay in that place too long, I won't get through the rest of this story. The engagement was beautiful. The engagement party was lovely, but somewhere between the engagement and the wedding, Brittany changed, or maybe she stopped pretending. I've thought about that a lot. She started making comments, small ones, the kind that are easy to dismiss one at a time, but accumulate like water damage, invisible until the ceiling caves in. "Daniel, your mom called again, 3rd time this week." Said with a smile, but the words were doing something else entirely. "Carol Ann, I love how you still dress the way you dressed in the 90s. What does that even mean? Daniel, don't you think your mom should start thinking about downsizing? It's just a lot of house for one person." She started calling me Carol Ann instead of Mom, which, fine, I never insisted on Mom, but she'd called me that for a year, and suddenly, just Carol Ann. I kept quiet. I kept the peace because Daniel was happy, and Daniel's happiness was the most important thing to me. I told myself, this is just an adjustment period. Brittany just needs time. But I was wrong. She didn't need time. She needed the performance of me disappearing, and she decided she was going to make it happen. Here is something you need to understand before I go further. When Robert died, everything came to me. The savings, the investments, the house on Ashford Lane, the house on Clover Hill, I inherited it all, not because Robert didn't trust Daniel, but because we had always planned it that way. Deal was, Carol Ann is taken care of first. If she passes before Daniel inherits, then Daniel gets everything. If she's still living, she decides. Daniel knew this. He had always known this. What Brittany apparently did not know, or did not believe, was that the house on Ashford Lane was mine. Completely and solely mine. My name, my deed, my property taxes, my everything. So when Daniel and Brittany got married in the summer of 2020, a small ceremony, COVID restrictions, and when they asked if they could move into the Ashford Lane house, I said yes. Of course I said yes. I had been rattling around in that 4-bedroom house alone for 2 years. It was too much house for one woman and too many memories in every corner. I moved my things into the master bedroom, gave them the other end of the house, and told them it was a family home for all of us. I told myself it was going to be wonderful. A new chapter, grandchildren someday, Sunday dinners, a full house again. I was wrong about that, too. Living with Brittany was like living with weather. You never knew what you were going to get. Some days she was perfectly pleasant, passing me in the hallway, asking about my garden, making extra coffee. But on other days, she was a cold front, silent, pointed. Every interaction designed to remind me that I was a guest in what she had decided was her home. She started redecorating. Now, I want to be fair. She had good taste. She really did. But she threw away a lamp that Robert's mother had given us as a wedding gift. She said it was too dated. I found it in the trash can by the garage. I brought it inside. I didn't say a word. I just brought it inside and put it in my room. She started having friends over without telling me, which is fine. I don't need a notice. But these were dinners, dinner parties. 6, 8 people in my kitchen, and I would come downstairs on a Thursday night in my bathrobe to find strangers sitting at Robert's table. I started eating dinner earlier, going to bed earlier, shrinking. I was shrinking in my own home and telling myself it was compromise. Then came the comments to Daniel. I know about them because Daniel, to his credit, eventually told me. She told him I was too present. She told him she made her feel like a guest in her own home. She told him that for their marriage to truly thrive, they needed their own space, their own home. Daniel came to me one evening. He sat at the kitchen table, Robert's table, and he could barely look at me. He said, "Mom, I love you, but Brittany and I, we need to talk about the living situation." I looked at my son, my boy with the dark hair and the initials carved in the crabapple tree, and I said, "Tell me what you need, Daniel." He said Brittany wanted to do some renovations that would essentially convert my section of the house into a smaller apartment, fewer rooms, a separate entrance, a mother-in-law suite, he called it. I said, "This is my house, Daniel." Gently, no drama. "You know that, right? This is my house." He said, "I know, Mom, but we're a family, and we're asking you to consider—" I stopped him. I said, "I'll think about it." I thought about it, and what I thought was, my daughter-in-law is trying to move me into a servant's quarters inside my own home, and my son is letting her. But I still said nothing, because, and this is the part I am not proud of, I was afraid of losing Daniel. The grief of losing Robert had hollowed me out in ways I was still discovering, and the idea of also losing my son, even partially, felt unsurvivable. So I stayed quiet. I made myself smaller, and Brittany took every inch I gave her. It was a Wednesday, middle of November, gray sky. The crabapple tree had lost all its leaves. I was making tea in the kitchen when Brittany came downstairs in her coat, purse over her shoulder, clearly on her way somewhere. She set a document on the counter in front of me, folded in thirds, crisp edges. She said, and I remember every word, she said, "Carol Ann, I've been advised by my attorney that the best thing for everyone at this point is a clean transition. This is a notice of eviction. You have 30 days to vacate the property." I didn't move. I just looked at her. She said, "I know this is hard to hear, but Daniel and I have decided that this house needs to be ours, fully ours, without the complications of a shared living situation." She used the word complications. I was a complication in my own home, in the home I'd shared with my husband for 20 years, in the home my son learned to walk in. I picked up the paper. I unfolded it. I read it. It was a real eviction notice. She had actually gone to an attorney. And then I felt it, that strange, still calm, because in that moment, every year of silence, every shrunk-back version of myself, every lamp in the trash, and every dinner I'd eaten early to stay out of her way, it all crystallized into something clear and diamond-hard. I folded the paper back up. I set it on the counter. I picked up my tea, and I said, very quietly, "Brittany, sweetheart, do you know whose name is on the deed to this house?" She blinked. She said, a little impatiently, "Daniel's and mine. We've been living here." "No," I said. "No, honey, you haven't." She looked at me the way people look at you when they think you might be confused. I said, "This house is in my name alone, has been since 1998 when Robert and I refinanced and put it in my name for estate planning purposes. I have never transferred this deed, not to Daniel, not to you, not to anyone." The color left her face. I said, "You might want to call that attorney back." She called Daniel immediately. I could hear her in the bedroom, the pitch of her voice, the way she said his name 3 times before he could respond. Daniel came home within the hour. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, same chairs, and I watched him process what Brittany had told him. He said, "Mom, is it true? The house is entirely in your name?" I said, "Yes, Daniel, it always has been." He said, "Brittany thought, she assumed—" "I know what she assumed," I said. "She assumed without asking. She assumed without knowing, and then she handed me an eviction notice based on an assumption." The silence between us was long. Daniel rubbed his face. He looked exhausted and younger than his 30 years. He looked like the boy who sat at this table crying over Melissa from English class. I softened because he was still my son, no matter what. I said, "Daniel, I need you to understand something. I have never wanted to take anything from you and Brittany. I have wanted nothing but for you to be happy. But I have spent the last 4 years making myself invisible in my own home, while your wife has treated me like an inconvenience she was waiting to eliminate, and I need you to see that." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I've seen it, Mom. I just didn't know what to do about it." I reached across the table and took his hand. I said, "You start by being honest." I'm not going to stand here and tell you that everything resolved perfectly. That's not how real life works, and this is a real story. What I will tell you is this. Brittany and Daniel are currently in counseling, marriage counseling. Daniel asked for it. She resisted at first, then agreed. I don't know what happens inside that room. That's between them. What I know is that I had a conversation with Daniel, a real one, the kind we hadn't had since before Robert died, and I told him everything. All the lamps in the trash cans, all the dinners I'd eaten early, all the comments in the rearranged centerpieces, and the slow, steady erosion of my presence in a house that had my name on the deed. He listened. He really listened. And when I was done, he said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have said something a long time ago." That was enough for me. Not everything, but enough. As for the house, I am still here, on my terms. I have given Daniel and Brittany a proposal, a formal legal one drafted by my attorney, in which I will gift them the house at a future date, under conditions that protect all parties, including me. Part of those conditions is mutual respect, in writing. Yes, I had my attorney put mutual respect in a legal document, because sometimes you have to get specific. Brittany has not spoken to me warmly since the day of the eviction notice, but she has been civil. Carefully, deliberately civil. And civil is something I can work with.
I've thought a long time about why I wanted to tell this story. Part of it, I'll admit, is the pure satisfaction of the thing. Because if you had seen the look on her face when she realized. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is this. I spent 4 years making myself small. 4 years swallowing discomfort. 4 years pretending that being invisible was the same thing as being gracious. And the truth, the hard truth, is that I did it to myself. Not entirely, not without provocation, but I participated in my own erasure. And I want every woman listening to this, every mother, every widow, every woman who has ever smiled through something that should have made her speak up. I want you to hear me when I say, your silence is not kindness. Your smallness is not grace. And peacekeeping is not the same thing as peace. Real peace requires honesty. Real relationships require truth. And real love, the kind worth fighting for, can handle a difficult conversation. Robert used to say, "Carol Ann, you are the strongest woman I know, but you've got a bad habit of hiding it." He wasn't wrong. I spent 4 years hiding it. And then one day, a woman in a silk blouse handed me a folded piece of paper, and I stopped hiding. I reached into a fireproof safe. I pulled out a deed, and I remembered who I was. So that's my story. A little less tidy than a movie ending. A little more real. Daniel came over last Sunday. Just him. Brittany was visiting her sister. We sat on the back porch with coffee and watched the crabapple tree. It's bare right now, but in April it'll bloom again. It always does. He said, "Dad would have handled this differently." I said, "How do you mean?" He said, "He never would have waited 4 years." And I laughed. Actually laughed. Because he was absolutely right. Robert would have had a conversation on day 1. Warm, firm, no drama. That was his gift. Mine has apparently been the longer game. But you know what? I won it.